Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to mute. It's all yours, Angel.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Angel Poe. I'm a member of Red Rock Audubon Society, and I'm excited that you're here to learn about Audubon's Climate Watch. This is a program that I've participated in personally for, I think, 4 years now. And in my previous job, I was actually an Audubon employee and ran this training many times as part of that duty. And now I'm presenting it to you as a volunteer for Red Rock Audubon. So I hope you get a lot out of it. There's a lot to cover. I don't expect everybody to get everything in the first pass, because if you've not participated in Climate Watch before, there's kind of a lot to learn. However, if you look on the screen, I've included my own personal email address where you can reach out to me if you have questions. And after this, I'm also hoping to send out some the slides for the presentation as a PDF. And then there's a secondary PDF as well that gives you a little bit more in-depth information on submitting your data to for Climate Watch. And that'll make sense when we're at that point in the presentation. Before I keep going, Doug, Paul, can you hear me clearly? Does everything seem okay on my end? Okay, I got thumbs up. And you're welcome to, if you want to go ahead and turn off your videos, that's fine. You don't have to, but that just, you don't have to then worry about what people are seeing the entire time during the presentation. There will be time for questions at the end. However, if something comes up in the middle and you're just dying to ask it, if you'll put it in the chat, and then if Paul or Doug can let me know that there's a question in the chat, and then I can address it when it comes up. All right, let's get going. So Climate Watch, if you've not noticed by now, Audubon's mission isn't just around birding and bird watching and getting people out in the field to see birds, but it really has grown into a mission that's all encompassing for protecting birds in the places they need, and addressing climate change and the impacts of climate change on birds is one of their primary goals as an organization right now. They released this report called Survival by Degrees, 389 bird species on the brink in 2019. This was published in conjunction with Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I think a couple of other birding organizations as well. And what this report basically found and reported to us was that modeling indicates that 2/3 of North American species that were surveyed are moderately or highly vulnerable to climate change through loss of range and/or habitat. And so Climate Watch is one way that Audubon is trying to address this projection by relying on surveys from folks like us on the ground to provide that data back to Audubon on whether or not birds are staying kind of in expected range, or if their ranges are changing in response perhaps to climate change. So this is just an example of a wood thrush and how the current range of wood thrush kind of is represented on this left map over here. And then projections show that if the climate changes by about 1.5 degrees Celsius warming in the next, I believe this is the next, it's by 2060, according to my notes, you can see that the deep rusty red indicates where there's potential for range loss. If a warming scenario of 3 degrees Celsius occurs, then you can see the really devastating impact on the right side of potential range loss that could occur. And you can also see there would be some potential range gain, although it's smaller than the range loss predicted, as perhaps the species moves north into Canada in response to climate change. Oh, just an aside, my husband just got home from work and my dogs are on the floor. So if there's noise in the background, you'll understand why. And so Audubon is relying on one of its great strengths, which is this network of people who are Audubon members or Audubon volunteers or participants who really care about birds and want to do something to address the potential impacts of climate change on birds. And so they're relying on us to go out into the field and conduct some surveys to report back on specific bird species that they feel are vulnerable to range loss, or even perhaps might experience some range gain in response to the changing climate. And what's really kind of fascinating about this project is they're looking at models that are expecting change within this decade, so within the 2020s. So as we get to the species, you'll see that these are species that are expected to have some significant changes within just the next few years. So first of all, before we get deep into the protocol, how is Climate Watch different from birding? Primarily, it's a science-driven survey and protocol. So I'm going to go over the protocol with you. You'll understand how to do the surveys and you'll follow those steps. You'll be monitoring with purpose, not just out birding for fun, like a lot of us do. Your hypothesis testing by looking and listing specifically for certain bird species. And then your data is going to go into the big pool of data that's being collected by Audubon to help improve future projections of bird species and their range adjustments based on climate change. The target species that are being surveyed are ones that have strong change predictions for the next decade or more. They often have wide geographic coverage. They're present in both winter and summer in North America, and they're easily identified and charismatic. I like that term. They're birds that a lot of us already know, and so they're kind of really easy for birders of all levels to target and look for and listen for, rather than being, really hard to find kind of more obscure species that might be harder for us to survey for. I see something came through in the chat. I'm just going to check it real fast. Oh, someone just said I'll monitor the chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. So the Climate Watch survey periods are January 15th to February 15th, and then May 15th to June 15th. We would love it if you could survey for both of those periods. It's not required, so no worries if you can't, but anyway, I just wanted to put those on the screen. The other thing to note is that even though the surveys end on the 15th of their respective months, the data aren't due until the end of the month. So February 28th and then June 30th would be the dates that you would want to submit your data by. Although it's always best if you could just submit it right away. That way you don't have to worry about forgetting data or getting confused based on kind of old data. So if you need more time, you have until the end of the month of February to submit your data, which can be helpful. So these are the National Climate Watch target species. They're not necessarily the ones that we will be surveying for here in our area, but these are the ones that are chosen for around the country. Just wanted you to see them. They are beautiful and charismatic and ones that a lot of us know. So as they said in their training materials, these little birds are ones that you should be able to find and know pretty well. And as Audubon was moving from these models of species to figuring out how in the world are they going to get volunteers out there to survey for these species, what they did is they kind of took this these model scenarios. I'm not actually sure which species this is. This might be the same as, this might be the wood thrush again. So they've moved from modeling to overlaying a grid over the entire North American area. And the grid is basically 10 by 10 kilometer squares that you will choose one of to go out and survey within. So they took the whole map, they overlaid a grid, and you'll see in just a few minutes when I show you the grid kind of up close and personal, what that looks like in real time on a real GIS mapping system that we're all going to be using to pick our squares. I'm just going to glance at my notes because I've kind of been rushing along without looking them. I just want to be sure that I've not missed anything. Only to say that this is the this grid that you see kind of over here, it looks a little bit different now. This was what it looked like in 2017 when the project was just beginning. So when I show you the maps in a few minutes, just will look a little bit different. So what is your role as a participant? Essentially, you need to be available during the survey period for one morning during the period. So it's not a super intensive survey. It's not like a breeding bird survey or something that requires a really long-term intense commitment. It's a one morning commitment. And there is some commitment as well in terms of picking your square and planning the routes. I will say that does take a little bit of time, although it's not a super intensive amount of time. I think in an evening of planning and then maybe one morning of trying out your route before you go out, and then the morning of actually surveying would probably be the maximum commitment that I would anticipate you needing for this project. You want to be able to communicate with me to plan your surveys if you need help. So that's kind of an optional one. You don't have to tell me your intense plan if you don't want to. And in fact, I don't need to know it, but if you need help planning, I'm happy to help you and coordinate with you in that way. You do need to be able to identify the target species that you choose, or you need to have the desire to learn it before you go out in the field. And that's learning by not just sight, but also sound as well. So you can identify birds for this survey by sound, not just through visual observation. And then lastly, a role that you'll need to take on is being able to submit the data. And I'm going to go through all of these steps in just a second. Okay, so before I get going into the protocol, I don't see that there are any questions, but I'm going to check the chat real quick. Don't see anything. Okay, I'm going to keep on trucking here. So the Climate Watch protocol is essentially a 5-step protocol where you're going to select and learn to identify your target species. You're going to pick a point from the grid, a square in which to survey. Then you're going to plan your survey locations within that grid, and then you're going to conduct point counts and then submit your data. So we're going to go through all of these steps right now. Step 1 is selecting your target species. You're encouraged to select one species so you don't feel like you have to focus on all the ones that are available in our area. I've kind of grayed out on the screen here the ones that we would never be surveying for in our area because they would be considered, rare in our area. The ones that are grayed out, don't even worry about. The ones that are not grayed out here, so the mountain and western bluebirds, the white-breasted and red-breasted nuthatch and pygmy nuthatch, American goldfinch, lesser goldfinch, and spotted towhee. Those are ones that are available for surveying to us. And you really only want to pick one, or if you want to do multiple birds, you need to, you can only really survey multiple species if they're ones that could share habitat. For example, I could potentially in my square maybe choose lesser goldfinch and American goldfinch. They're going to have some overlap of habitat and often be found in the same area, so that would probably be okay. I wouldn't necessarily want to survey for lesser goldfinch and white-breasted nuthatch together. They usually aren't going to be seen in the same habitat in our region. And so one thing I want to caution as you pick a species is pick one where you know what habitat they'll be in and you can access that habitat. So, some of the nuthatches that are on here are more mountain species. If you're not someone that has regular access to Mount Charleston, you may not want to select that as your target species. You may want to pick something like the goldfinches or the bluebirds or even the towhee that might be down in the valley. So just something to note. I'm going to look at my species, my notes real fast. I don't see any questions regarding that, so I'm going to keep on going. If you are concerned about, I really don't know which species I want to pick, there's this neat tool that you're going to be using a lot, but you can use it also for comparing target species called the Survey Planner. And I want to show that to you real quick. It's on this the site here, this gis.audubon.org/climate-watch site. This is the mapping tool that you're going to use a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. And I'm going to start my share again and go over to that mapping tool. Let me find it real quick. I may have closed my. It's not going to look right at first. You're going to see a Zoom screen, but do you see a map right now?
Yes. Hey,
Okay.
Angel, would you mind dropping that link into the chat when you get a chance?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can do that real quick. So I just dropped that link in the chat. If you're welcome to actually go to it and play around as I talk. So you are trying to, if you're really torn about species and don't know which ones you want to survey, one thing that you can do is come to the survey planner, and you'll have to tweak some settings. And then I do have this in this. You can also access this link through the documents I'm going to be sending you after the program. But I'm going to fix my layers to start with and show, really, I just want to pick climate watch suitability by species right here. And let's just click on lesser goldfinch, for example, and you'll need to click a season. So winter is clicked here. And you're going to have to then pick a place. So I should have done this first, but if I just could do Las Vegas, Nevada, it takes me to Las Vegas. And you can see, this is kind of a cruddy map. I don't like this map. I don't think it shows enough detail for me. I often will change the maps, and I'll go through this again in just a minute. But if you go to the upper right, you see change base map background. And I like one called imagery with labels. So I just click on that. But you can, I don't actually know, that's probably not even better. That's actually looks worse for what I'm trying to show you. So I'll just take that off. But you can see that for lesser goldfinch, you see now there are these like orange and these blue squares that are kind of appear on the grid. And so what that means is orange actually means a prediction that perhaps the range might be improving in that area. And then blue indicates that there might be loss of range in that area for winter time. The strange thing about this is that when you see a mixed grid like this, that's actually kind of an indicator that there's some just really unknown conditions, and their projection for this area is not maybe as strong as some other areas. And so actually lesser goldfinch is a decent survey contender, because you see we have in our area a mix of the orange and the blue happening. And when you kind of have that mix, that's an indicator of like, that's an edge of perhaps there's some range change that could be occurring due to climate change. So just something to note. And you can play around with this if you're trying to figure out what species you want to survey. You can change it to say, I don't know, like Western bluebird for winter, and see what you get. Oh, that didn't click, sorry. You know, there's a mix in the area of blue and some orange as well. So there might be another species. In fact, when we first started this a few years ago, through Red Rock Audubon, I think Western bluebird was the species that we chose, but they've now expanded the species, and you don't just have to focus on one species as a group. Many people could focus on different species as well. So that's why I wanted to show you this functionality. I'm going to stop the share. I hope that wasn't too confusing. To me, that's like the most confusing part of the presentation. So hopefully that made some sense. And go back to where I was. Going back to, okay. All right, somebody does have their mic on, just so you know, if you may want to check and see if your mic needs to be turned off, that would be great. Answering questions for frequently asked questions, and also for step-by-step guide to Climate Watch, that's available directly from the map. And so this big eye that you'll see on the mapping tool menu bar is going to be your friend. If you kind of get lost and have some questions, you can go there and read about the different steps of Climate Watch. And of course, you can always call me or email me, and I'm happy to help as well. Okay. So we're going to go through how to use the Climate Watch mapping tool. I've put this link, or not this link, but this like picture showing go to the eye again, just simply because it's something that I find super important. So I'm doubling up and giving you that information, and go to the giant eye for information if you need more help. I guess it's eye for probably instructions, not information, but there you go. Okay. This slideshow has step-by-step guide. It is a step-by-step guide on the actual like clicks you're going to take to use the mapping tool. But I also felt like it might be helpful if I walk you through it. So I'm going to quickly like just show you, trust me that all the steps are here. But I'm going to show you how to do the square selection in real time right now. So I'm going to stop my share, going to restart it back over on the mapping tool. Does anyone have any questions right now before I go into clicking on and claiming a square? Don't see any in the chat. Feel free to like ask me directly also through your microphone if you like. Okay, I'm going to keep on going then. I'm going to stop my share, and then I'm going to go over to the mapping tool. So to claim your square, what you're going to do is from this Climate Watch. First of all, does everyone see the map? Is the map showing? Can I just get confirmation you see a map with the grid overlay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So you're going to go to this website I told you about, this Climate Watch thing, Climate Watch address. Then you're going to go down here to claim a square. It's the second tab, not the first tab. You're going to go second tab to claim a square. And here we see a not super helpful, hold on. I think it's actually going to take me back to where I was when I was prepping, but it's going to take you to this map of the United States, the Western Hemisphere, pretty much is what it looks like here, the northwestern hemisphere of the globe. And that's not going to be helpful to you one bit. You'll want to zoom in first and foremost to Las Vegas or Clark County or wherever your surveying is going to take place. Also, just to note that if this layers tab is not already open as it is, if this thing is not open, you want to, it might look like this to you, and you may just need to do a little click to open the layers tab, because this is going to be really important. So what I'm going to do is type in my Las Vegas location there. Just to real quick walk you through this map system and what it kind of looks like is you're not really going to mess anything up, just so you know. I was afraid of that when I first started using this, but you're really not. I think it might be hidden. Yeah, because it says show search results. But if you click off of where it said Las Vegas, you'll see that there are some buttons up here that could be helpful to you. So this one that looks like a window pane or a window with like or 4 squares with a cross in between is the base map gallery. If you click on that, you can adjust the view. So you can click whatever version of this map you like best. I happen to like imagery with labels, so that's the one I usually click on. But you could see that there's tons of other options you can play around with based on just what you prefer. You're going, as you see right now, there's no grid that overlays this area at all. So what you need to do is play around with the layers. So the reason there's no grid showing is that there's no species selected. So let's go ahead and come over here, and I'm going to just stay with my friend, the lesser goldfinch. If you click on lesser goldfinch, you should see that there's a grid that overlaid the area. Hopefully you'll see that, and you see some of them actually have red on them. So this one is red. If you were to click on that, and then you can kind of click on this arrow, it kind of takes you through and shows you who has this, who's claimed this for lesser goldfinch. So I happen to claim that area for lesser goldfinch. That second page is really just some information about the chapter that this square belongs to. So it's a Red Rock Audubon square. But you can see here, this is where I had put my name, and you can see it's claimed for me. So what I'm gonna do is walk you through how to claim a square from scratch. I'm gonna pick kind of a square that's kind of way out over here that no one else is gonna be probably competing for, just to show you how to do this. So if I were to click over here, and if I want to do it the slow way, I could click here and I could go through and edit right there and do Smart Editor. But this is new, a new and improved map this year. This actually just got updated a few weeks ago. I'm really excited. From this screen, you just come up here to the right top corner, and you can see there's a little light bulb with a pencil, and that's called the Smart Editor. If you click on the Smart Editor, it gives you instructions, which is super helpful, but then you can click on this unclaimed square from the Smart Editor, and it turns this like pretty shade of green. And then you have this dialog box that opens, and I can go ahead and claim this square for myself. So this one, I picked lesser goldfinch for a reason. There are some species that for whatever reason, it just says their species name and then there's no season beside it. If there's no season noted, it's summer. So I could say that I'm gonna claim, or I say summer, but it's that May to June 15th period. It's hot enough for summer here. It's still technically spring, I guess. But I put my name in for the summer period, and then I put it in for winter, and I just hit save. And that's all there is to it. I've claimed that square. And then I can close this out and we're good to go. Let's say I'm someone that travels during summer and I don't stay here during summer, and I'm just going to survey during the winter period. You can do that. I can come down here, just make sure my name is removed from that summer period, hit save. And now the square is blue. So if you see a square that's simply blue, that means that person is just going to survey it for the summer. If it's orange or a kind of yellowy orange, it just means they're going to survey for, excuse me, I misspoke. If it's blue, they're surveying for winter. If it's an orange square, it's summer. If it's red, it's claimed for both survey periods. So that's really all there is to it for claiming a square. I'm going to go back to the chat, see if there's any questions. Can you unclaim a square if you change your mind? Yes, absolutely. The way to unclaim a square is just kind of as I showed you, you go to the Smart Editor, you click on the square you need to change, and then I can take my name off altogether. I think you have to tab or click on another field, hit save, and that square is very easily unclaimed. So there you go. And note that I had to click the species, right? So if I want to do this survey for several species, I do have to click and get a new grid and reclaim it. And that's kind of a pain, but it's also a way to be sure that you're really choosing to survey the species you've chosen. So that way you don't go in and just blanket put yourself on 12 different species for our area, because that's just unnecessary one. And it's something that's going to be hard for you to do. So it's better just to pick one species, maybe two, if they're in the same kind of family of species. If you have goldfinches, you could pick both American and lesser goldfinch, and that wouldn't be too hard to survey together. I see a question came in the chat. I'm just going to check it. So can you not claim a square someone else has already claimed? So not necessarily for that species. So if something is claimed for lesser goldfinch and you want to survey lesser goldfinch, you're going to have to pick a different square. But if something's claimed for one species but open for another, then you can claim it for that second species. So if I click here, if you go up here, you can turn all layers on. It's going to be ticky. There we go. So this is everything that's claimed for our area for all species. And you can kind of click on a square. I'm going to just pick this blue one here because it's easy for me to find. And then kind of going fast, so let me slow down. I click this blue square here, and then I click this little arrow off the pop-up. You see like a bigger pop-up, and you can see that there are different, on each page is the different species that could potentially be surveyed in North America. So if you click through, you'll see there are species that are open, but then, oh, my friend Daniel has claimed this square in winter for Western bluebird, but it's open for pretty much all these other species. If someone wanted to go and survey mountain bluebird, they could, and they could just come here and claim it for mountain bluebird. Some people ask, does that mean it's kind of a free-for-all? Let's just say it's the honor system. I guess technically you could take someone off the square, but please don't. I've actually gone in already and noted who's claimed what squares for which species already. So please don't be going in and like taking people off squares. That's just not a cool thing to do. So we're all going to be in the honor system here. If I will say for my square, I was playing around and I think I have several species. I've claimed kind of a Northwest Las Vegas square that includes Floydland Park. If anyone else, I've claimed a few different species in that square. So if anybody wants that square and wants to trade off a species with me, let me know. I'm happy to talk with you about that. Okay, let me just stop my share. I'm going to go back to the presentation, make sure I haven't missed anything. Going from here, I think, so this is just how to select the squares. I walked you through this step and this step in the Smart Editor. So as you see, all the steps are outlined for you here on the presentation, so you can refer back to it. Next, step 3 is planning your survey locations. So why is this important? Well, you're going to, within your square that you choose, you're going to have 12 survey points, and the survey points need to be at least 200 meters apart. So it's best if you, before you go in the field, take some time, look at the map, plan out your 12 points so that you don't get out there and you're struggling to figure out, am I 200 meters away from the last spot? Or, oh gosh, there's not good habitat in this area. What am I going to do? Planning can really save you time in the field. And this is a really cool feature of the mapping tool that I'm really excited to show you about, which is there's this buffering tool that you can use to plan points, and then it actually will measure for you and let you know if they're more than 200 meters apart. However, if you're not comfortable using this buffering tool, you can also pace out 200 meters. You can use a pedometer or an odometer, a smartwatch that counts steps, something like that, to help you gauge 200 meters. But before you pick your survey locations, you definitely want to think about where is the best habitat for your target species. You know, you don't want to be up on, you don't want to be looking for a bird in this habitat that's where it's not going to be. You're not going to be looking for a spotted towhee in the middle of Lake Mead. You're not going to do that. You're going to find some scrubby habitat somewhere else. So just be careful about the points you choose, that they're going to have the right habitat for your birds. And try to scout out sites prior to surveying. As I said, I found my first year I didn't do that and I really regretted it. My second year, I did a much better job of scouting out my points, and it went much more smoothly for me during my surveys. And then also think about what is feasible to compete in one day. So I will tell you, at one time I picked an area in Red Rock, and that was going to be, this is my first year surveying, and I had to hike to all of my survey points. And I barely made it under the noon deadline for ending my surveys, because just the time it took to hike and get into suitable habitat in my square was not really feasible. I really came very close to not making my survey time that day. So just think about what's feasible to complete. Okay, and again, use the eye. on the mapping tool if you need help, if you get lost in the middle of working through the system. Oh, and just as when you go to that instruction, I wanted you to see, when you go to that instruction manual, you have this nice menu, and adding survey points and checking survey points are there for you. And those guides are going to be really helpful if you need a little more support using the buffering tool. Also, you can contact me. I'm happy to Zoom with you and walk you through the process. Okay, so I'm going to stop this, go back over to my map. Thanks for your patience as I work through all of these switcheroos. Okay, everyone see my map again? Can I get a confirmation?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right, so now that we have our square claimed, we're going to plan out some points. So I'm going to kind of zoom in, remind myself where my point was. Okay, so you want to use Survey Planner, which is the first tab. So you'll go over there, and you'll remember we were kind of messing around with some of with figuring out the climate watch suitability by species. So I'm going to take off that layer by going over here. And I'm just going to take off that layer. I don't need it. But what I do want to go ahead and do is look at my claimed climate watch squares. Those show up. And if you can kind of click through and see the all the different choices, and these will start making more sense as we go through. Planned survey sites means that somebody's already been in there planning out their points. And if I click on it, you'll probably see a few that show up. Yep. Okay. So I'm actually going to need, you're going to want planned survey sites clicked. I forgot that. So click on planned survey sites. You want to see your claimed climate watch squares. And then this is where the map choice might really make a difference to you. I'm going to go ahead and zoom way in to my square, which I happen to know is this little one here. And then I'm going to change my base map so I can see more detail. Again, I like imagery with labels. Your mileage may vary. You might like something else. But I'm going to zoom way in. And that's the cool thing about the planner, is that you can go really deep into the map. And so I'm going to zoom all the way in here to Floydland Park, which is probably an area I want to spend some time surveying when I'm out in the field. I see a quick question. The claimed climate watch squares show only your squares or everyone's are shown. This is kind of a joint effort. So it's a real community project where all of this data is out there for everybody to see. So people will see that you've claimed a square. So if that matters to you, just know that they can. All right, so let's look at how in the world we go about picking and plotting our points. This mapping tool up here is really good. They've made some great edits over the last few years to make it to really make it more intuitive. Just follow your 1, 2, 3. The one up here, if you click on it, is the claim a climate watch square, and it tells you how to go claim it. We don't need to do that. We have my square already claimed. The 2 is how you add survey points, and that's what we're doing now. We're going to go ahead and put some points on the map. The way we do this, you want to change feature layer to planned survey sites, and then click on the type of bird that you'll be surveying for. So I'll be surveying for lesser goldfinch. I'm going to click on that, and then all I've got to do is come over here, and I'm going to actually put it up here. Click on the map, and then you get a pop-up. So you'll want to fill in some of the information into these fields. So the year, this really, by the way, this information is for you. So it's not super important you follow an exact format. So I'll just go through what I put in this pop-up. I put the year. I go ahead and put the season, winter. I'm just going to go ahead and put summer because I'll do the summer survey. Excuse me, I need to take a sip of my tea. Notes, I usually put my name or my initials, and then site ID. I like to label my points so I know which one I'm on. So excuse me, I'm going to put Lego for lesser goldfinch, 3 of 12. I close and then click off of it. And then my point is there. I'm really sorry. I'm going to mute myself. I really have to cough and I don't want to do this on the screens. I just thank you for your patience. I haven't talked this much in quite a while, so my voice is a little, it's kind of recovering, so I apologize for that. So anyway, that's how we put a point in. I did it pretty fast. So I'm going to do one more. Again, plan survey sites. I clicked on goldfinch because that's the one I'm going to be surveying here. And then I'm going to pick a point over here. And then I'm fill in the year, the season. I'm going to go ahead and plan for winter and summer. Put my initials, or you can put your name, it doesn't matter. This is my 0.4 of 12. Okay, so while I just closed that pop-up and you'll see that the point is a round red circle. While it's the red circle, you can actually move it around. The other thing I want to point out is why it's important to show the squares is that right here, this kind of mint green line is actually the boundary of my square. So not all of Floyd Lamb Park is in my square. The natural trails area, if you know the park, that's not really included in my square. So I've got to be super careful that I don't go over this line, that I stay over here. So I'm just going to do that. While it's red, I can still move it. But I'm pretty happy with where it is. I'm going to take off I'm going to click off that point and then it turns yellow. So that's how you add the survey point. Now, the kind of the really fun part is you get to test to see if your points are that 200 meters apart or more. So I go to step 3, which is called the 200 meter survey points buffer. So it's 3 and then it's the point with a circle around it. If I click on that, I go down to where it says input. It's kind of cut off, but it says input right here. Points. I'm going to click on plan survey sites again. And you see when I did that, it populated a little rectangle and a trash can icon to the right. So what I can do is click on, make sure your square is moved where you have all your points together. I'm going to click my square, excuse me, my rectangle icon there, and come over here to my square on the left side and just click and drag. And you see little blue circles went around my squares. Now, if I click run right here, it's going to run the program to determine if these are more than 200 meters apart. So if I scoot this back over, you can see those that I happen to pick are, they started off with a little tiny darker blue square and then a larger blue square populated. And you can see that my squares are apart by more than 200 meters because that circle, the bigger circle, is a 200 meter diameter circle on the map. Let me show you what it looks like if I have one that's too close. I thought those might have actually been too close, so that's why I did it that way, but I'm going to intentionally put one that's too close to another. Oh, wait, first I need to show you. Excuse me, you can come over here. I went back to when I've removed these circles. So I've come to the output, make sure the output tab's open. I'm going to click this X and it removes the bigger blue circles. And then you have to go to input and then click the trash can and then the little blue circles disappear. It's kind of an annoying thing, but I want you to know, because if you didn't know that, it would drive you a little bit crazy probably. So let me go back and put another point in that's too close. I'm going to go back to that. Let me show you back to the 2. That's the plus and the point. And then I'm going to go to feature layer, plan survey sites, click Goldfinch. I'm going to come super close over here. Put my point. This is just a quick dummy points. So I'm not gonna, well, I'll go through the whole process just so you see it again. EP, I think this is Lego 5 of 12. Close, click off. Sometimes it requires a double click. All right, so there's my point that's going to be too close. Now let's go prove it to ourselves that it is too close. Go to 3, plan survey sites is already up there. Click your icon with the rectangle on it. Really just worried about these 2 there. So I'm going to put those, just highlight those 2, and I'm going to hit run. We'll see what we get. Aha. So if you move the map back over, you can see that these 2 circles overlap. And so that means my points are too close together. So I'm going to go ahead and click the one little X to remove the big circle, and then the trash can to remove the little circles. The fun thing is I can actually go over and then just double click to edit that point. So you double click it, you can click there. There's probably a smarter way to do this. I don't know it, but I opened the pop-up for the point, and then I click the 3 dots, and I can go edit and then close that screen, and I can delete my point right there. And so there you go. I'm going to check. I think there's a couple questions that came in for this section. It's all of this instruction. Yeah, all of the instructions I'm giving you here are under that eye icon in the map, so that's this upper right instruction icon that's right there. You're also going to get copies of my presentation. So not just the video, but you're going to get the actual PDF slides that go through this step by step. Is there someone's asking, is there any way to easily find your square in case you forget the area you claimed? I don't know of one. That is kind of something that that I've struggled with as well. So I don't know that there is a way. What I would say when you claim a square is notice the grid ID. So if I go back to claim a square and I click on, I think my square is this one for lesser goldfinch anyway. But you see that there is a grid ID right there. You can search on grid ID later in that location box. And so that might be one way that you can find your square again, is by grid ID. But otherwise, you just have to remember the general area that you've claimed in and click around until you are sure you're on your square. Okay, I think that's it for the points and the map. So then how in the world do you actually do the surveys? And then how do you submit your data? That's the next part. Okay, so we planned the survey locations. I'm just going to show you that everything I just went through is in my presentation that's going to be sent to you. One thing I didn't show you, but if you make an error in placing the point, it can be moved using your mouse cursor or deleted by double clicking on the point, scrolling to the bottom of the pop-up and selecting delete. So I showed you the delete, but you can also double click the point and move it around with your mouse as well. Is everyone seeing the presentation again?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. So we've planned the survey locations. I'm just going to click through these slides. Okay. So conducting your point counts. How do you do that? So step 4, conducting the counts. You're out in the field. You're ready to go. What are you doing? You're going to conduct 12 5-minute point counts in your square. The points should be 200 meters apart or more. So that's 200 meters from point to point. So those diameter circles that I was showing you in the map, those will help you determine that distance. You're going to complete your point counts between sunrise and noon. Just note that on average, it takes 2 to 5 hours, depending on where your points are located and how you have to travel to get to them to actually complete the surveys. But it's just one morning. It's not going to be multiple mornings of your time. Keep a separate checklist for each point, making sure you know the location, the time, and the species. If you use eBird, that's kind of done for you. You don't have to worry about that. But if you're keeping keeping list to submit online later, you need to note those data points of location, time, and species. If you're submitting through the Audubon app, which I'm going to show you and walk through this stuff in just a moment, then location in time is not so important, but location is noted for you. However, you do have to have your grid ID handy. So if you're using the Audubon app or Audubon website to submit your species information, just note that you need to know your grid ID. So I use eBird, it's a little bit easier. Avoid surveying during inclement weather. So inclement weather means for us, clearly if we have some big rainstorm, snowstorm, super high winds. Now for our area, some winds are, expected. We have fairly windy weather. But I would say I think online it says anything over than a sustained wind of like 20 miles per hour, you shouldn't be out surveying in. And then your two options for recording and submitting data. Option one, this is best if you use eBird. Record all identifiable birds seen or heard in your eBird app and the numbers of each within 100 meters of your point location. So you're not going to be birding and saying, using a scope and scoping something that's more than 100 meters away. If you see a flock of geese flying way off in the distance, you're not going to note those as part of your eBird checklist. You're just going to be recording the 100 meters from where you're standing. So that's option one. Then and these are point counts. Let me just say that again. You're standing in one point. You're not moving around birding. You've picked your point. You're standing there. You have a 360 kind of view around you, 100 meters in all directions that you're surveying in. Option two, you're recording only the target species. So this is if you're not using eBird and you're going to use the Audubon app on your phone, or you're going to go back online later and note the species in the Audubon website portal, then you only need to note the target species. Either way, you do also need to note if there are nest boxes or feeder stations present. So if I'm watching lesser goldfinch at a feeder, then I want to note that in my comments on my eBird checklist. And then if you're submitting online or through the app, there's going to be a field where it's asking you to click if there's a feeder box or a feeder or a nest box present. Also note, please, a count of 0 is data. So if you do the eBird and you're out there, you're putting in all your species that you're seeing and hearing. Even if I have no Western bluebirds, and that's what I'm serving for, I've got to go ahead and put 0 next to Western bluebird. And then when you complete your checklist, that 0 will be captured as part of your data entry. Okay, so how do you do that data entry in the field? So there's 3 ways: eBird, Audubon app, and then there is a paper form that we don't encourage you to use. So I don't really go over it in this presentation, but if you must use a paper form, get with me and I'll let you know the best way to submit that form. So the easiest way is for me, I think, is to enter your data into eBird. That way I'm just out there kind of doing my point count by birding as usual, recording every species I see or hear, whether they're the target species or not. I'm going to start my checklist and run it like normal, except I'm not going to use hotspots. So that's something to note, is that you want to click on personal location. The picture I have of eBird, the eBird app that's on the screen, is a little old. It's an old version of the app, so things look a little bit different now. But essentially, you're going to use a personal location, not a hotspot, because generally the hotspot's not going to be pointed to directly where you're standing. So you want the most precise location you can possibly get. Things that might be helpful to include, and this is for your own personal, like how you can keep track of the points. You might want to put your square number. You might want to put your survey number out of 12. I do that. I don't really put my grid number, but I'll put Lego 1 of 12 or 3 of 12. That way it can help. It helps me keep track of each of the points. I leave the GPS data that appears, that way that exact point is captured. So if you have GPS coordinates that appear as part of a personal location, leave those in. And then they've suggested, Audubon has suggested you might want to put a note for yourself that it's of like 300 feet from the water fountain or something that's really meaningful to you. So if you go back to that point in the future, you can know exactly, oh, it was that tree I was standing under to do my point count. Again, as I've said, if you do eBird, go ahead and count and record all birds you can identify within the 5-minute count period. Please don't include anything that you see en route to your point or hear en route to your point unless it occurs also during that 5-minute survey period. In the comments of your eBird checklist, so this is one thing to note, go ahead and put if there are nest boxes or feeders present. And then when you submit your checklists, make sure it's a complete checklist. That's super important. You don't want incomplete or incidental. Those don't be counted. It has to be a complete checklist to count for Climate Watch. Okay, that just shows you kind of what it would look like. Oh, the other thing I note in my comments is the species. So they do recommend that in the comments you put the banding code for your species, or you put just the species name. So Ebel is for Eastern bluebird, or you could just type in Eastern bluebird. Okay, there's your submitted checklist. And then if you want to use the Audubon app instead, during the Climate Watch period, Audubon will open up a portal on its app. You go to the My Audubon section. I think that's what it's called. I'm gonna check it real quick. You go to the My Audubon section of your app, and yes, that's what it's called. And you should have a link to submit Climate Watch data. This will only open up just during the survey period. So it's hard to show you real time because it's not live right now. It will be live January 15th, but you can, as you see on the screen, you'll have to fill in some fields, identifying yourself as part of the Climate Watch participants. And then you do need that grid square ID number and your point number out of total number. So there's a bit more information you have to put in, but then you come over and then it's just like a drop down, actually not a drop down, it's fields that you fill in for the data to tell the number of species you saw. There's a drop down here for number of feeders, number of nest boxes. You can do that through the app. That'll be really helpful if you have the app on your phone. And then there is this paper option that I'm not even going to go into because none of you are going to use it. But essentially, there is a paper option. If you want to use it, you can. Let me know. I'll help you understand how to submit this data. That's the hard part with the paper option, is actually getting that data put into the system for Audubon. Okay. So step 5, we're on the last part. Thanks for sticking with me. We've got 25 minutes, but we can get this done sooner. Step 5 is how to submit the data. This is in a separate PDF that's also going to be emailed out to you. So I'm going to switch over to my PDF. Let's see. Sorry, just let me find it. Okay. So submitting the data, the last step. So you've gone out, you've planned, you've gone out, you've done your surveys, you've entered in your eBird account and completed your checklist, or you've entered your data into the Audubon app. Here's how you actually submit. So there are 4 different ways to submit Climate Watch data. You can send your eBird checklist URLs through a submission portal. This is way easier than it sounds, and I'll show you how to do that. You can use Audubon's mobile app. If you use the mobile app in the field, the good thing about that is that you don't actually have to go through a separate step to submit. You'll just get your app out and you'll go through and enter all the identifiable information they're asking for from you. And then you just submit what you see right then and there, and you don't have to worry about a second submission step. So using the Audubon mobile app is actually a really easy way to submit your data. If you keep a checklist, say, like if you do keep a paper checklist, then the best way to submit the data that you keep is through Audubon's web version of their mobile app. It's actually the exact same portal, but it's just on the web versus on the phone. So we'll walk through all these steps. And then submit a paper form with your data is step 4. Really, that's not even really an option for submitting anymore. If you complete a paper checklist, you're going to get with me, and I'm going to help you put it into the web version of Audubon's portal. All right, method 1, if you use eBird, you're going to send an eBird checklist URL to the Audubon portal. So the way to do this is you've been in the field, you've already submitted your completed checklist to eBird. There's no great way yet for eBird and Audubon to talk with one another to know that these are Climate Watch checklists. We wish there were, there's not yet. So what you're going to do is you're going to have to come home and go to your ebird.org website. You're going to go to your account, going to click on My eBird, as you can see, and it's sort of, I've circled it in the menu up there. You'll go to My eBird Preferences. So this is a little tricky. You do need to unclick Hide My Checklist Comments. And that is because they want to see what species you are actually trying to do a Climate Watch survey for. So that's where in your checklist comment, you may have put Lego or lesser goldfinch, and you would have put no feeders, no nest box. The Climate Watch folks at Audubon want to be able to see that comment. So you have to unhide any checklist comments. Then you go to Manage My Checklists, and you're going to view your checklists. And then you're going to submit the 12 URLs to Climate Watch using an online tool. It's this really long website that's on the screen there. And then it's also available on a certain web page. I'm going to take you to that web page real quick if I can. Let me know if you don't see a web page. Okay, so this is called How to Submit Your Climate Watch Data. I'm going to drop this in the chat real fast. Uh-oh, sorry about that. That's dropped in the chat. It'll also be on all the information I send out to you. You'll scroll down. They're going to go through about on this page exactly what I'm going over with you. But if you go down here to this eBird section, submit your checklist. This is really easy. It seems like a lot of extra steps, but I find it easy since I use eBird all the time. You go ahead and enter your contact information, but if you scroll down, you can click what species you are actually looking for. So I would probably do lesser goldfinch, American goldfinch, pick your season. Then all you've got to do is take your eBird checklist. I'm going to go to eBird real fast and pull a checklist ID. Hey, you're inside my eBird. Yay. Let's say this one that was from my home was part of my Climate Watch. I'll take this number here and Control C to copy it. And then I can Control V paste it right over into the portal. The other thing I often will do is I'll go through and one time go ahead and copy all of my checklist S numbers. I don't know what else to call them, but my checklist ID numbers. I copy them to like a Word document, and then they're kind of saved there. And then when I come here, I can just quickly cut and paste over.
Angel,
Yes.
we're not seeing your screen when you're showing us into what you're doing in eBird.
Okay, so sorry. Let me try to reshare and go to eBird again. Yeah, I wasn't sure if my clicking between web pages is going to work or not. Do you see eBird now?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did was I took this number up here from my checklist. Sorry, you get to see on my little drop down from my own personal web searches. But you see the S number there. I'm just Control C. I'm copying it, or I right click, copy it. And then do you see the tab I just switched to, the Climate Watch checklist tab?
Yes.
Okay. Then in your boxes, you just paste. I wouldn't do the same one twice, but you would just paste it in the box, the S number that you copied. And again, like I was saying, I often will just, before I put them in this Audubon system, I go and save them to a Word document, the little S numbers real fast. And then it's a quick, it takes me like 2 minutes to cut and paste from that Word document. So this is if you're using the Audubon, the eBird way of submitting data. Going back to my presentation. Guys, I know this is a bunch to get through. I'm so sorry. This is kind of long, but hopefully you're learning a lot tonight. So back on my presentation, the next step, let me get myself, okay, this is going over the eBird submission and how to, this is just what I was showing you, enter your S numbers into your eBird or your Audubon portal. Method 2, if you use Audubon's mobile app, as I was saying, it's pretty much done for you. So there's really not much more to tell you. If you've entered the data into the Audubon app, then that data is automatically submitted. So that is by far the easiest way to submit your data. Step 3 is if you, for some reason, you're out in the field, you can't get the app to work, there's a web version of the Audubon app you can come back to. And it's very similar to the eBird version, except that you're not entering in any checklist ID numbers. You're just putting your data directly in here. The only problem is you have to have that grid square ID number, and you need to know your location pretty exact. They prefer if you can enter in for location name, they prefer you'd actually enter in like GPS coordinates if you can. That's kind of tricky. If you're in the field, the app should capture that for you. But as you see, you can just go in and click on the target species and then fill in the number of species that you saw that day. Method 4 is the paper form. You do the paper form. There is a way to submit it to a shared folder that Audubon owns. What I would just say is if you have a paper form, get with me. I'm happy to help you figure out how to submit the paper form through the portal. That's going to make the job of National Audubon staff members way easier. So if you need help with that, I'm happy to help you. Okay, that is it. That's all I've got. And I left 15 minutes for questions, so I did it. So let me see if there are any in the chat that I need to get to. And then if you have questions, I think we're a small enough group. If we want to turn on video and ask questions, I'm totally fine with that, as long as the hosts are. So someone asked, when you select your points within your square, does it give you the GPS coordinates for those locations so you know where to go when you were in the field? I don't believe it does. So that's the tricky part, is you're going to have to use your GPS on your phone to kind of mark the points as close as you can to the point you selected on the computer. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you use that mapping tool in the computer to survey and to plot your survey points, you can zoom in super far. Like you can see specific trees and know what tree you're going to stand under. So you don't have to actually have the exact GPS coordinate when you're plotting, as long as you know what tree you're going to, if that makes sense. It is kind of it's a great question, and it's one part of the system that isn't well figured out yet. So I hope that answers your question. Got a thumbs up. Okay. Any other questions? Feel free to turn on your mics.
Angel, it's Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I did a square last year, and I claimed the square. I don't remember having to claim it for one species. Is that something that's new?
It is something that's newer. It used to be that that you claimed, and it kind of claimed it for everything, but you had to note your species. So that's
Okay.
They changed.
Okay.
And I emailed everybody that I found had a claimed square in our region. So I don't think I sent you. Did I send you an email about that? I don't think I did.
No, I did not get that email.
Yeah, I didn't think that, so I don't know that yours is still technically claimed under your name. So you may want to check that. And if someone has kind of jumped in there and gotten your square, you can let me know and we can talk about it. It's very likely we have an abundance of species to choose from here. So that's a good thing, is that perhaps if someone has claimed it for one species, you could claim it for another species.
Okay, because that was my next question. Do I need to go back and sort of redo it? And it sounds like yes. And then make sure I claim for just the one species. Oh, that's perfect. That's
yeah, I should have said at the beginning. I've emailed in the last week everybody that I know has claimed a square already, and just to kind of ask them, are you gonna survey again? And that way I went ahead and wiped out people who responded to me and said, I'm not going to survey this year. So
okay, very good. Cool, thank you.
Sure. What is the size of the square? I see that in the chat. It's a 10 by 10 kilometer square. So that is the size. Any other questions?
So, Angel, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, so I've used eBird a time or two, but I've never actually used the Audubon app. I have it on my phone. I've never actually tracked birding with it. So I don't know what the capabilities are, but it sounds like you're saying it's similar to eBird in that if I go stand at a point and input the birds that I see and hear, it's going to somewhat track the location that I saw them in and kind of do a lot of this for us to make it easier to do it that way.
It's supposed to capture your GPS coordinates from the location where you're surveying from. I will give one big caveat is I tried it last year and I did not have success. I don't know if my app wasn't updated in time. I don't know why I didn't have success. So I just stuck with the eBird version of submitting, even though it's a little bit trickier because then you've got to go back to your computer and do some things. But I stuck with eBird because I tried the Audubon app and I didn't have success. Doug, have you submitted through the app before?
Yes, the first year I've been doing this, I used the eBird, and then subsequent years when the app was developed, I started using that. So Nate, it's not like the eBird where you're there and you are surveying all the birds. You're actually just targeting, you're looking for the species you're looking for. So it's very narrow in its scope. But as Angel said, the neat thing is you hit submit and it tells you 0.1. And then you go to the next one, 200 meters away, and you start again and you hit submit and you get point number 2. So when you're done, your 12 points, you're done, right? It's the data is all uploaded already.
And it captures that GPS location for
Exactly.
you. Okay.
Exactly.
I think mine was a matter of I think I was in the field and realized I hadn't updated my app yet. And so so I would say if you're wanting to try the Audubon app version on January 15th, you need to probably update that app. If you don't have I don't do automatic updates on my apps. I have to go in and manually tell my phone which ones I want to update. So that's just something to note, I think.
Yeah, and also for folks that are impatient like me, sometimes I go like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And it really doesn't show up until the 15th, right? So, but also I would, Tori, one of the things I think Angel mentioned about one of the preparation steps is actually go do a trial survey. Just figure out exactly where your points are, because you may find out even with all the mapping and all that, you may want to adjust it, right? So a big part of picking, I have found routes, is how accessible is the first starting point. Yeah, so something that Angel mentioned that I did not realize, that you really do want to get it completed by noon. And you can get away, the survey can get away from you, right? If you haven't planned it.
It really can. And I've had people say like, oh, I showed up and I didn't hear or see my bird immediately. So I stayed until I saw my bird or heard my bird. And then I started my point count. That's not how to do it. Like if you show up and you start surveying and you don't see your, and I'll tell you, more times than not, I do my 12 point counts. And I may only have 1 or 2 individuals of the species that I recorded. So don't wait to observe or hear your bird. Go ahead and start your count. and just log a 0 for that count for that species.
I've logged 0 on all 12 of my points before.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Yep.
Yeah, and that data is really valuable because this whole thing is trying to validate the computer projection of habitat changes over time. So we are the ones that are going out and validating the computer model, right? So every time we do submit data, the model gets updated with our data.
One
So
thing
zero-
oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say 0 doesn't mean failure.
That's right. One thing I didn't mention in the presentation that's kind of a new suggestion is that if you don't feel like you can do 12 points in a morning, you can split the points within your square with one other person, or another person or two. Just they all have to be done before noon on the same day. So just note that that's a new kind of suggestion. If you can do them all 12 yourself, that's always going to be best. That way you know they're done. But if you need to split 6 and 6, you can. But just all in the same day, all the same morning, same time period.
I would also recommend that you take a friend, take a buddy with you, just in case something.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to a remote area.
Yeah.
And also, I won't speak for everybody else. If you're new to this, let me know. I'll go out with you the first time because I don't care how much you study. I don't care how good Angel's instructions are. When you get out in the field, you see, like for me, everything is forgotten, right? And you go, oh my God, what do I do? Right? So it's always good to maybe the first time you're doing this is to ask somebody to go with you, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with people as well. Any other questions?
I guess one question I have in looking at the species that were available, some of them I'm not familiar with, so a lot of study would be required, but is a lot of the habitat or the squares that are available, are they urban? Are they, I noticed that you had, like Floyd Lamb was where you were targeting. It seems like on some of those, you may get zeros on all 12 points in any square, in any species.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So I think that one of the reasons Audubon now allows multiple species to be surveyed in a square is for that reason that, you might get zeros in for, spotted towhee and Lake Mead kind of thing. But you might see other species there. So a lot of the squares that are available are urban. I will say, like even my square, I went ahead and took a lot of species, but I'm actually going to go in and delete off most of the species. I'll keep lesser goldfinch, but open it up for other species. So now there should be lots of opportunity given different species availability in many squares. But yeah, I would say the urban areas have more squares available. That said, we're really trying to get people out there to into our urban parks and find out what's there, get people interested in birding. So it's an opportunity as well to go in places that perhaps we don't bird very often. Go with a friend, check for goldfinch in the trees at the local parks. That's what I would say.
Well, my daughter and I walk every week, and we've seen a small flock of lesser goldfinches every Sunday. I'm going to try and find that square.
There you go. Do that. I love that.
I think the most problematic area in the winter, particularly, I think what we're experiencing right now, are the Mount Charleston area. Getting to the location, because if those roads get really messy, and those species, the nuthatches and all that stuff, are staying up there and haven't come down. That's the one I would say is problematic this winter, probably. But the rest of the areas, I think the spotted towhee, the goldfinches, and things like that should be there, right?
Absolutely.
May not be like really abundant, but they could be there.
Well, that's part
I'll
of
jump on that Mount Charleston grenade with you, Doug, if you want to go up there with me.
Not really.
the four-wheel drive.
Depends, Nate. If it's a beautiful 50-degree weather, sunshine, we may do it. Right?
You might need snowshoes for your square.
Hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Kathy Kleinis asked where the list of available species is. Kathy, it'll be in the presentation that I send tomorrow. It'll be in, I'm going to send like a PDF version of my slides, and so you'll see it there. Hi, Tori. I don't think I've met you before. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi. I had one last question. Hopefully it's not too long.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, or someone just mentioned that there's a lot of urban space in some of these places. So like there might be some ideal parks, or, like Floyd Lamb is a great place to explore. But what if you can't find any great points that are 200 meters apart, or whatever the distance is? Like, would you just be able to go to like a certain area, or like what if there's like private property that you can't reach in that single square? So do you absolutely need 12 points within that square, and or would you just recommend not doing that area if you can't find 12 points that are accessible?
Yeah, you do need 12 points, and so that is a challenge. I came from Texas, where there's so much private land that we would have squares that you knew that there would be tons of species at, but there was no access to it because they were all privately held lands. So that's something that can be a problem. As one of my jobs as coordinator is to help you though. So if you have a point or a square you really want to try, and you're like, there's these parks I'm not quite sure about, reach out to me and I can help look at the GPS map with you. Not GPS map, but you know what I mean? I can look at the map with you. And then, that's also where on the ground, like going and planning like on the ground can be really helpful too, is that there might be habitat you don't realize. Can always drive through neighborhoods and look for groups of trees. And if you're standing on like a public sidewalk, you can look at the trees and still survey there. So
yeah, I wouldn't go on private property without permission.
Absolutely not. That would be a violation of our birding ethics. So we won't do that anyway. But
yeah. So every part of the United States is broken into these 10-kilometer squares. So these are not small squares. So it's 10 kilometers, So I think sometimes in our minds as birders, we think about these large habitats like Las Vegas Wash or Floyd Lamb or Sunset Park. You may find that in a 10-kilometer square urban area, there may be some smaller habitats within it. And as Angel said, when you look at the maps, I like the one, the different layers. There's one where it shows all the streets, right? There's that view. I typically start there because my square is here in an urban area. And I look for these little green spots and they become my 12 points.
Yeah, I know, like just walking in my neighborhood, I see trees often see lesser goldfinches, American goldfinches, so in fact, they come into my yard. So, pick an area in your neighborhood, and, start in your yard and, branch out from there. So.
okay, any other questions? We kept almost everybody the whole time. I'm super impressed. I'm super impressed with that. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your attention and your interest.
Angel, thank you. This has been really, really excellent. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
I hope it clarified some things for you. And if nothing else, you're going to get the slides and be able to click through and follow along. So hopefully that went okay. That'll go okay for you. But I'm here if you need me, here to help.
Yeah, we hung in. You're a good
Angel.
teacher, Angel.
Much needed intervention here, Angel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not bad. It's easier than you think, I promise.
Okay.
Thank
nice
you,
to
Angel.
meet everybody I've not met before. Good to see you all.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Angel.
Thank you, Angel.
Bye all.
All right, bye, everybody. I'm in the
Bye.
log up here.